I do run our local Man Up to Cancer chapter here in Florida. And, we go each year, we have a annual retreat up in the Poconos. And a good friend of mine who I'll never forget, he stood up one night at the campfire and he said, the beautiful thing about Man Up to Cancer, and you look around and you think about this weekend, is nobody asked you who they voted for, who they prayed to, or how much money they had. We all just said, we love you and hugged each other. We're there when you need us and how you need us, not any other way. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it. And that is what Man Up to Cancer is all about to me. It's really about being there for other guys who are going through something very similar to what you were going through. I'm so grateful that Man Up to Cancer was there for me.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about beating cancer. I'm delighted to welcome Tim McDonald. Tim is a research advocate, patient advisory council member, chapter leader for Man Up to Cancer, host of the Advocacy at Work podcast, and author of From Patient to Advocate. Tim is a super advocate involved in multiple associations, and I'll include all those links in the show notes. Welcome, Tim. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here, Linda. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I appreciate you. No one ever wants to hear the phrase, you have cancer. And
No.
it changes everything. It's not just physical. Immediately, it's emotional, it's mental, and then it becomes financial as you're fighting for your life. Would you be willing to share your story?
Yeah, well, it was back in November of 2020. We were all facing something similar with COVID during that time, but during Thanksgiving, I experienced a pain in my side that brought me to the urgent care in my neighborhood on Sunday, and they ordered a CT scan because they weren't sure what was going on. I went on Monday morning, got the CT scan, got called back to urgent care. They knew something was up. They brought me right back, and doctor came in the office like about a minute after I was in the room, which we all know if we've ever been to a doctor before that almost never happens. So I knew something was up. And as soon as he walked in with the white sheet of paper, he told me, you have cancer. And that was that. And I didn't really have a primary or really good insurance at the time. So I was just kind of leaning on him to help me understand what my next step needed to be, which was getting into a GI surgeon to get a colonoscopy so that they could put a stent in my colon. So, because the tumor was so big in my colon that it was almost blocked off, and
Oh
they had
dear.
spots in my liver as well. So I got in there and then ended up getting into chemo treatment and finding some support groups, like I mentioned in my intro. The Man Up to Cancer group was the first one I joined, which was just a space for men dealing with cancer to kind of know that they don't have to isolate through the journey themselves. But we really talk more about emotional support than we do treatments. And one of the guys that helped, run it and is still involved in it, um, was also a colorectal cancer guy. And I asked him, hey, is there any other groups I can go to that would talk about treatments? And he pointed me to Colon Town. So I went in there, and it was very different than Man Up to Cancer just because it was a mixed, both men and women in there, but also like they had so many different, even though it was just colorectal cancer, it was so many different groups that they have. So it was a little bit overwhelming at first, but I found one that was for people with liver mets specifically that I really was drawn to because that was my condition. And I learned about a liver transplant, and that kind of set me on the path down that road. And I finally, after a year of chemo, got approved to have my donor meeting and start searching for my own living donor. Um, Fast forward 14 months, and I was able to get a living donor liver transplant from an amazing human being up in the Rochester, New York area, Beth, who I didn't know beforehand. She had actually, I think I was told that I was probably the first ever colorectal cancer patient to get a what they call a non-directed donor, meaning that she did not call on my behalf. She called for somebody else, but wasn't a match. They explained that they had somebody else that she could help in a similar situation, and that's how she became my donor. Because she said, "I don't care who I donate to, I just want to help somebody," and so that's how I got Beth as my donor, and then been no evidence of disease since then. Although I do say that cancer is a gift that keeps on giving. You get a whole bunch of side effects from prolonged chemo, plus my immunosuppressants I'm on for the rest of my life because of my liver transplant. Give me a whole new set of health conditions as well. So it's like one of these things. I never try and complain about it because I do feel very fortunate to still be here. I was only given 3 years to live, and that was 5.5 years ago. So it's definitely something that I like to say that I'm still kicking, just not as high.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. I am grateful to you. You mentioned that there's different aspects, and we talked about that a little bit. Man up to cancer, and I want to talk about that a little bit more. But you kind of caught my attention when you said a living liver donor. So will you teach me about that first?
Yeah, well, one of the things, and I love having this conversation with anybody who asks me because most people don't realize that you can actually donate part of your liver while you're still alive. You don't need to just do it when you get your driver's license and put that you want to be an organ donor. You can actually do it while you're living, because the liver is an amazing organ in your body. Not only is it kind of the filter for your whole body, it also is one of the only solid organs that will regenerate itself. Um, so they took about 80% of her liver out and put it in me, and hers regrew in about 5 to 7 weeks back to its full size.
Whoa, really?
Yes.
From 20% to full. I didn't know that any part of us did that. That's like when you cut off a limb of a starfish and it grows another piece back. So they take 80% when they do the surgery. Wow, she is a hero. That's amazing.
Yeah, and the surgery for her is just like it is for me. It's a major surgery. So nobody like raises their hand and says, "Yes, I want to go get this done on me." But she was an amazing soul that actually did it. So I'm really grateful for her. And I got my 3 year transplant anniversary coming up here next month. So I'm like, usually make a trip up to Rochester just to have dinner with her and her husband and thank my transplant team for all they did for me.
Oh my goodness. That is amazing. What an incredibly selfless, kind, generous gift. That blows my mind. What a wonderful person. She's a
Yeah.
hero.
Yes,
Wow.
I actually call her my angel. Anybody that is willing to be a donor, I think, is a complete angel. I don't care who you pray to or go to church for or anything like that. It's like, just angel in the sense of being this amazing person on this planet right now that we can say has done something that was life-saving and incredible for somebody else.
Wow. Yes, she is an angel. And now you have become an angel for people as you pay it forward. And you have not only, because there are so many aspects, so many issues that we have when we're dealing with cancer, that emotional, that physical, that financial, and you have become a part of all these different organizations. So let's start with Man Up because you mentioned that one. And there was a comment that you had put here that I loved, and it's women reach out and men check out. So, as men and women, we respond to horrible things happening in our lives quite differently. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, actually, it was Trevor Maxwell was the guy who founded Man Up to Cancer, and he's another colorectal cancer guy. But he was in some of these same groups that I belong to and found that even though the population was 50% male and 50% female, that the conversation was dominantly female, meaning like 80 to 90% of the people talking in these groups were females. And whenever he felt like he put a thought out that was honest and vulnerable, he felt like he was not being responded to in a way that he expected. It was coming from a different viewpoint. Um, and it's not what he was looking for. He was looking for, oh, I don't want to put words in his mouth, so I can't say what he was looking for, but it was basically, I'll just, paraphrase what my belief is that, sometimes we just, men and women are wired differently. And sometimes men just, we're not used to expressing ourselves emotionally that much. And so when we say things or vent on things, we just need to get it out of our system so we don't hold it in. And I think sometimes, women in these groups take it the wrong way, like that we're complaining about something, that we're, you know, not happy, that we're depressed, that we're giving up. And it's anything but that. But the responses just don't come back in a way that support most men. And so that's what formed him to drive form Man Up to Cancer. And it was really a space for only men to come, anybody impacted by cancer. And it just became this really safe space where, and it's hard to explain to me because, you know, and I do talk to a lot of guys in the group too. And there are still guys that join, they introduce themselves. I get on the phone with them, I talk to them, and then they stay in the group, but they never post anything else. And, you know, but that one conversation can mean a difference in somebody's trajectory in how they feel about their diagnosis and their treatment path. And I give this example because I just talked to a guy, this very example. Um, you know, he introduced himself. I gave him my number. We talked for like an hour and a half. Great call. And then earlier this year, I emailed him and I said, because I do run our local chapter here in Florida, and I have what we call a mini retreat in Orlando each February. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, do you think, because I knew he wasn't too active in our community. So I said, hey, do you want to come, to our retreat? And he said, oh, thank you so much. It's so great to hear from you. He goes, I just can't deal with all the loss that I see in the group. That's why I haven't been too active there. But I really appreciate everything you did to me. You changed how I looked at things. I'm I'm getting better. I'm like no evidence of disease now. I'm getting ready to retire. My kids are out of the house. My wife and I are going to get an RV and start traveling the country. And so he was doing great. But when I first talked to him after he was diagnosed, he wasn't. And it's all because he joined Man Up to Cancer. And so for me, it's not about like everything that you participate in there, because there are still guys that do check out, but we're there when you need us and how you need us, not any other way. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it. And, we go each year, we have a annual retreat up in the Poconos called Gathering of Wolves. And I can't tell you how many guys I meet that I've only met online. Sometimes I don't even know what they look like. We notice each other's names, and we just embrace each other in a giant hug and tell each other that we love each other. And a good friend of mine who passed away a couple years ago, I'll never forget. He stood up one night at the campfire and he said, the beautiful thing about Man Up to Cancer, and you look around and you think about this weekend, is nobody asked you who they voted for, who they prayed to, or how much money they had. We all just said, we love you, and hugged each other. And that is what Man Up to Cancer is all about to me. It's really about being there for other guys who are going through something very similar to what you were going through. Um, you know, and for me personally, it was a place where I knew that sometimes the chemo did not make me the friendliest person to be around. And my wife, unfortunately, took the brunt of that. But if it wasn't for Man Up to Cancer and me having a place where I could go and just yell and vent and let stuff out of me, she would have taken all that. And I'm so grateful that Man Up to Cancer was there for me, because it did reduce the amount that she had to take from me.
That is fantastic. I'm so grateful that this organization exists, that you have a safe place where you can be and experience in a way that helps you and that helps other people. And isn't it interesting that we respond in different ways as a general rule? And often it's women who complain, I just want a sounding board. I want to be able to vent. I don't want you to try to fix me. And as you were describing what it was that you wanted and that these other men wanted, I just want to vent. I need to get it out. It's in here and it's killing me, and I need to get it out so that at least my head is in a good place or my heart is in a good place. And and I'm grateful that someone was wise enough to create that space.
Yes, me too. Very much so.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. So we've talked about the some of the emotional side, which is huge, and mental and emotional. Now let's get into finances, because you
Okay.
said this diagnosis came. I don't even have a primary physician. I don't have insurance. Does that just mean I'm dead? And you have found ways to, there are even scholarships available. Will you kind
Yes.
of talk about that? Was that the PAN Foundation or?
Yeah, yeah. Well, they just merged with another organization, so there's it's called PATH now, Patient Advocate Foundation. And so really what happened was when I knew that I had my diagnosis, and I'm pretty active online, and I always have been. So I knew that this was meant for to happen for a reason for me. And that reason that I had determined at that time was just to make sure that nobody else would have to go through what I was about to go through. And so I knew I wanted to share this, but I knew I needed to talk to my immediate family, make sure they all knew. Um, and I also knew when I put this out in the world that if I wasn't specific in what I needed, I was going to be overwhelmed with people telling me what they wanted to give me or offer me.
Ooh, okay.
And so I was very specific in my three things, which was one, just I wanted people to give me their prayers, good thoughts, vibes, energy, whatever you wanted to get, call it. I would accept it with gratitude. Um, the, you know, the second thing was I wanted to try and get into Moffitt Cancer Center, which is a major national Cancer Institute comprehensive cancer center here in Tampa. And since I didn't have good insurance at the time, if anybody had any strings that they could pull to get me in there right away, that would be helpful. The third thing was, since I knew I didn't have good insurance, I had asked if anybody had any ideas or knew of a good insurance person for me to talk to let me know because I needed good insurance. Um, Needless to say, I was overwhelmed with people giving me their prayers and good thoughts and good vibes. I actually had somebody that I knew from when we lived in Chicago who became a realtor down a little bit south of here in the Tampa area, who had helped a researcher at Moffitt buy a house. And so she connected me with her, and she helped get me into Moffitt through their foundation, which gave financial assistance to people that didn't have a lot of money. Um, and the insurance thing, I had somebody connect me with their insurance broker, and the insurance broker told me all the things that I had already looked into, the Affordable Care Act and all this stuff. And I was like, no, 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 it's not going to work for my situation. And I was telling her all the stuff, and she goes, hold on, I have an idea. And that idea was to have me become a de facto employee of a company and be able to get the insurance as long as I paid my full premium. And so that's what I ended up doing. So I got really good insurance. It was very expensive out of pocket, but that did help. But then I started using all the things that I started like networking and asking questions because I was doing this during COVID. My wife and I had just like an online business. And so I got really good at researching what grants were out there, what loans were out there, what kind of opportunities were out there. And I'm like, well, geez, I did this for that. Why can't I just now change it and do it for my cancer treatment? There's got to be programs out here. And so I started doing my own research, but it wasn't until I had some friends actually share some resources that their parents had used or that they had used. And it was for, prescription medications, which I really wasn't on any prescriptions at the time. But then there was PATH, which is the Patient Advocate Foundation, who had a program that was basically for disease type. And it only opened up when they had funding available for that disease. And you got a notification, you could sign up. And when I signed up, I got the notification, applied, and I got $4,000 grant from them to cover any of my medical cost or insurance premiums. So for me, basically, that was almost 3 months of my insurance premium that it covered each year for the first 2 years that I got it. Which was, I mean, it doesn't sound like a ton of money, but it was a huge help during that time. And ever since then, I have just become very passionate about, making sure that patients that are going through treatment today understand that there are financial resources, there's transportation resources, and there's programs out there to help people if you can't afford getting a second opinion, if you can't afford your medication, if you can't afford treatment. These are all things that, you know, are not barriers, they're just obstacles. And so I am a big proponent in trying to help change our system in the US to make it where it's much more affordable and accessible for everyone.
That is so huge. And what a beautiful distinction you made. This is not a barrier, it's an obstacle. Yes, this is a problem, but it's something that we can work around, we can work over, we can work with. That's fantastic. And one of the things it says that you were working with was to urging lawmakers to make the copays count. So was that working toward the deductible, or what was that about?
Yeah, well, they have what they call these copay accumulators. And so, I thought I was being pretty ingenious and finding all these rebates that the drug manufacturers give you for certain medications. And then you go in, you pay your copay, and all of a sudden you realize like, oh, okay, the amount from the pharma company is gone. I don't owe anything on my copay now because I paid all that, during the time. And then the pharmacy tells you, oh, you owe this much. And you're like, what do you mean? And you're like, well, your insurance company didn't count all those payments that you made when you were using the rebate from the drug company.
Okay.
And that is something that really hurts patients, especially in financial need situations, that you're not expecting that. You're already putting out the work to find and being resourceful enough to find these rebates. And then you're getting it to a point where the companies or the insurance companies are saying, no, you still owe us this money because you didn't pay your deductible yet. And I'm like, this does not make sense to me. And so, fortunately, I found organizations who are just as saying the same thing as me and actually working together to call on Congress to help in, avoid this from happening in the future. And there's so many different issues that help different patients. They're very broad in their disease space, so it's like not just cancer patients going through this, but anybody with like a rare disease too. So we're looking at topics that really affect a lot of people, not just cancer patients.
That's fantastic. Um, that that gives so much hope to think, okay, this doesn't there is a way. There is a way to be able to afford the treatment that I need. There's a way. And that makes so much difference in the way that our outlook on how this is going to turn out, because it can go one direction or another, or somewhere in between. Um, so we've talked a little about emotional. We've talked a little bit about some of the financial, and also some of the legal. And then you have also your part of the CRC, the Fight Colorectal Cancer group. So it's okay now. let's come up with a way to solve this. I think it's beautiful. It's like you're involved in every facet that could possibly be.
Well, I was going to say in the book that you mentioned, I do write about there being four types of advocacy, and the one that I'm not that passionate about is the fundraising aspect. But it does touch on financial, but I do help in other ways on financial, just not in the fundraising aspect. But I do think that it's very interesting to me to understand because liver transplants for colorectal cancer patients originated in Norway. Norway has an opt-out donation program. In the US and most North American countries, it's opt-in, meaning we need to decide that we want to be organ donors. In Norway, you need to tell the government, I do not want to be an organ donor. So obviously, you can imagine that Norway has a lot more deceased donors than the US does. They do not have a scarcity of donors, they have an abundance of donors. And so what they started doing in Norway was just saying, hey, any colorectal cancer patient that's got liver metastasis, let's just give them a liver transplant with one of these livers that we have and see if it helps. And the results were disastrous because they weren't qualifying which type of colorectal cancer condition the patients had. Was it still progressing in their colon and in their liver when they did the transplant? Was it, you know, did they remove the primary before they did the liver transplant? So there was no real protocols to it. It was just done. And so everybody was excited about it, but then everybody got disappointed. So it sat there for about 15 years. And then in Toronto, I believe it was, there was a team there that said, hey, what if we actually do this and really get selective in who we choose to be a recipient? And maybe we can have better outcomes. And they did. And so that thinking, that research that was done to determine that that would be the way to do this is something that I'm still here for. And that's why I'm so passionate about doing research advocacy is because now I get to sit on review panels for government grants to researchers. I get to work with pharma companies developing new clinical trials. I get to work with, organizations who are looking at, because it's not just a new treatment or a new drug. It's also like, how do we get more people in underserved areas screened for colorectal cancer? Because screening is the biggest, the easiest form of prevention for colorectal cancer. And so it's like that is research advocacy as well. And it's been fascinating to me because I kind of shied away from it first because I don't have a science background. I'm not like, not a researcher by trade. I had just really thought it was going to be over my head. And granted, it's a little intimidating still when I get involved in some of these, but what I've learned is they're not wanting me for any of the expertise that they already have. They want me for the patient perspective. What does this mean for not only me, but other people like me? And that to me opened my eyes up and really wanted me to get more involved in this because I truly think that research advocacy has the biggest potential to make the biggest impact.
That is fantastic. And what a good reminder to get screened. And isn't it wonderful that you had the courage to step out and say, I don't know if I fit in this particular group. And you do. You were the missing piece. You were exactly what they needed in order to be able to have that whole so that they can make a good decision. Thank you. This is amazing. I have appreciated your input and I have learned a lot today. Is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
Well, I think that the biggest thing, and I just want to kind of follow up on a point that you just mentioned, was, I think so many times in life, really, we avoid things because we think that we're not qualified or we don't matter in that sense. And what I've learned through all this is we are very capable of doing things, but we just need to try it because our brain does a lot with telling us like what we shouldn't do and holding us back. And the reality of the matter is, until we try things, we don't know. And so just give something a try next time you're thinking, I shouldn't do that, or I'm not qualified for that. Or just give it a try experience it, and see if it's something you enjoy. And if it is, just lean into it and do it.
Wow, excellent advice. And that applies to everything, not just cancer patients. So thank you. You've just now globalized your message. This is for everyone. Oh, thank you so much for visiting with me today, Tim.
Thank you.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Maya Angelou. She said, I learned a long time ago, the wisest thing I can do is to be on my own side, be an advocate for myself and others like me. Today, I invite our listeners who are struggling with any kind of challenge to advocate for themselves and to help others who are struggling with the same challenge. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.